Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The rain poured down on the city's filthy sidewalks, turning the streets into icy rivers. Sitting under a makeshift shelter of cardboard and plastic, Lila, a 10-year-old black girl with piercing eyes and a courageous spirit, clutched her small bag containing all she had left, a piece of dry bread and a threadbare blanket. The night promised to be long and dangerous, but Lila knew the city well. She knew where to hide from indifferent passers-by and police officers too rushed to notice a homeless child. A few blocks away, Alexander Monroe, a billionaire renowned for his businesses and philanthropy, stepped out of his black limousine. He was laughing with his assistant, unaware of the danger that awaited him that evening. As he crossed a narrow passage, an explosion rang out just a few meters away. A homemade bomb, hidden under a car, could have cost him his life. But at the critical moment, Lila emerged from the shadows. She had recognized the trap thanks to her incredible instinct and unbelievable courage for a child her age. With a swift movement, she pulled Alexander out of the way just in time. Alexander, stunned, stared at the small, rain-soaked figure, face covered in mud, but eyes shining with determination. "How?" he murmured, unable to find the words. Lila said nothing. She simply pointed to the street behind him, where the explosion had occurred. That night, something shattered in Alexander's world. For the first time, he saw beyond his wealth and comfort. He saw the pure, selfless courage of a child society had forgotten. And in that gaze, he understood that his life would never be the same again. A few weeks later, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about her. He couldn't forget that little girl who had risked her life to save a man she didn't even know. And while he was searching for her, he didn't yet know that this encounter would transform not only his life, but also Lila's destiny, from the streets to the highest echelons of society. The morning dawned gray and damp, the streets still glistening with the previous day's rain. Lila, huddled in her threadbare blanket, rummaged through the garbage for breakfast. She knew she had to survive another day, alone in this cruel world. Her curious, watchful eyes observed every movement around her, every person who passed by. Just then, a black limousine screeched to a halt around the corner. Alexander Monroe stepped out, his immaculate coat barely protecting his suit from the persistent rain. He held a phone to his ear, discussing urgent matters, completely absorbed in his world of wealth and power. But something caught his eye, a small, dirty, frail girl sitting on the sidewalk, staring intently at his limousine. A strange intuition struck him. Without knowing why, he slowly descended the steps, leaving behind the assistant who continued to gesticulate on the phone. "Hello," murmured Alexander, in a soft, almost hesitant voice. Lila looked up. Her large, dark eyes shone with a mixture of mistrust and curiosity. She instinctively stepped back, but there was something about Alexander's presence that calmed her slightly. You're the one I saved?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. Alexander knelt down beside her, impressed by the courage of this little girl. "Yes, and I believe I owe you more than my life." "What is your name?" "Lila," she replied simply. A silence fell. Alexander looked at Lila, realizing he had never met anyone so courageous and independent, especially not at her age. He saw in her a strength that money couldn't buy, a light in a world he thought he knew. "Lila," he began softly, "I'd like to help you. Not just today, but, really. I want you to have a chance in life, a real chance." Lila looked at him, surprised. Since when did a millionaire care about street children? She had learned to distrust promises. But something in his eyes told her he was serious. "Why, me?" she murmured. Alexander smiled, a genuine smile, a rare occurrence for him. "Because you saved me, and maybe I can save you, in my own way." This was the beginning of an unlikely bond, that between a homeless girl and a billionaire man. A bond that would change their lives forever, taking them on an adventure where courage, hope, and destiny intertwined in unexpected ways. The next day, Alexander couldn't forget Lila. Her face, marked by poverty but illuminated by incredible strength, haunted his thoughts. He knew he had to act quickly. A child like her had no time to lose. In his luxurious office, surrounded by glass walls and leather furniture, he pondered how to offer her a better life. But the world of business and high society was not kind. The people around him, accustomed to opulence and control, considered any help for a street child a naive, even pointless, gesture. "Alexander, you can't change the life of every street child," his assistant said skeptically. "I'm not talking about all children. I'm talking about her," replied Alexander, determined. He knew he had to find her. He asked his assistant to contact people in the city, charities, and even taxi drivers. Every lead seemed to vanish, but his intuition told him Lila wasn't far away. Meanwhile, Lila, true to form, was trying to survive. She knew life could be cruel and that no one would ever give her freebies. But something about Alexander's memory intrigued her. Perhaps this unusual man could actually keep his promise. That evening, Alexander finally found a lead thanks to an old friend who worked at a community center. A little girl, alone but surprisingly resourceful, had saved a man during a recent incident. The friend gave him the approximate address where Lila had last been seen. Alexander decided to go there himself. In the dark, damp alleyways, he finally spotted the small figure huddled under its blanket. Lila recognized him immediately, but she remained cautious. "Lila," he murmured softly. "I came as promised. I want to help you." She hesitated for a moment, her survival instinct clashing with her desire to believe in the man's goodness. But something in his eyes, the sincerity he exuded, convinced her to follow him, at least to hear what he had to offer. But the road to a better future wouldn't be easy. Obstacles, jealousies, and the dangers of the street awaited Lila at every turn. And Alexander would soon discover that wanting to change someone's life involved more than money. It required courage, patience, and an unwavering faith in destiny. Alexander held Lila's hand gently as they walked through the narrow city streets. The little girl, though intrigued, remained wary. Every sound, every shadow seemed to put her on alert. The rain had stopped, but the slippery ground and dark walls bore witness to the hardships of life on the streets. "Don't worry, Lila," said Alexander, smiling. "You have nothing to fear now." She looked at him, her eyes still full of mistrust. "Why me? You don't even know me." "Because you did something very few people would have the courage to do," Alexander replied. "You saved my life, and that changes everything. And I believe you deserve a chance to see the world differently." After a few minutes' walk, they arrived in front of an immense building of glass and marble. Lila looked up, astonished. It was Alexander's residence, a modern palace where every detail reflected luxury and sophistication. The doormen and staff greeted them respectfully, but Lila suddenly felt like an outsider, almost frightened. "Don't worry," said Alexander, placing his hand on her shoulder. "You're safe here." Lila observed the immaculate corridors, the thick carpets, and the artwork hanging on the walls. She had never seen so much wealth and beauty. Yet, her instinct told her to remain cautious. She had learned never to trust appearances. "You're going to stay here," Alexander said softly. "And you'll be able to learn, play, and most importantly, never again be afraid of lacking anything." Lila lowered her eyes, a mixture of gratitude and doubt. "What if I do something wrong? What if I can't adapt?" Alexander smiled. "No one is asking you to be perfect. I just want you to be yourself. That's what real change is." For the first time in a long time, Lila felt a weight lift from her shoulders. A new world was opening up before her, a world where money and power meant not fear or mistrust, but protection and opportunities. But in the shadow of this new life, unexpected challenges awaited her. Lila would have to learn to navigate wealth, society, and the dangers of her past. And Alexander would discover that saving a life meant not only offering safety, but also earning the trust of a little girl who had known nothing but the streets. The first few days at Alexander's house were a whirlwind for Lila. Every corner of the immense home seemed to tell a story of wealth and comfort she could never have imagined. The plush carpets, the bookshelves overflowing with books, the paintings and sculptures, everything amazed her. But the little girl remained wary. After all, the streets had made her cautious and suspicious. "You can touch whatever you want, Lila," said Alexander, seeing her hesitate. "Here, nothing is forbidden to you." Yet, even surrounded by luxury, Lila couldn't help but compare this life to the one she had always known. The abundant and delicious food reminded her of days when she had nothing to eat. The magnificent clothes made her feel like a stranger in her own body. The first real test came when Alexander invited her to dinner with his friends, influential figures in the city. Lila, seated at the table adorned with candlesticks and fine china, listened to the conversations with curiosity and apprehension. She realized that these people spoke a language she didn't understand, a world that seemed light years away from the street. One of the guests, noticing his silence, dared to. "And you, little one, where are you from?" Lila felt a shiver run through her. She wanted to reply, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. Alexander gently interjected. "She comes from a place where courage is more precious than gold." The guests, intrigued, fell silent and exchanged admiring glances. Lila then understood that she didn't need to lie about her past to be respected. Her truth was enough. However, despite this initial social victory, more subtle obstacles awaited her. The life of luxury wasn't just fascinating, it could be intimidating and sometimes cruel. The rules, manners, and expectations of adults in this world were complex. Lila had to learn quickly, but she was determined not to be overwhelmed by this new world. Alexander, for his part, realized that helping her would not be limited to providing her with shelter and clothing. He had to become a guide, a protector, and sometimes even a teacher, capable of teaching her not only material comfort, but also confidence, patience, and an understanding of a world she had never known. That night, Lila fell asleep in her bed for the first time in years, her heart a little lighter, but aware that the real adventure was only just beginning. The sun had barely risen above the horizon when Alexander suggested to Lila that they go out into the city for the first time, not to survive on the streets, but to discover the outside world with safety and guidance. Lila, excited but nervous, adjusted her new coat and followed Alexander, her small hands clasped tightly in his. The city, which she knew for its harsh and dangerous side, now seemed different. The glittering shop windows, the crowded cafes, and the luxury cars made her dizzy. She no longer knew whether to admire or fear this new world. "Don't worry," said Alexander, seeing her hesitate. "Everything is under control. I'm here." They walked to a park where children were playing, some with balls, others with the latest tablets. Lila stopped, fascinated, but also aware that she wasn't like them. She didn't know how to interact with these children who had everything she had ever wanted. Then, a boy of her age approached, curious about this newcomer. "Hi, where are you from?" he asked, a mocking smile on his face. Lila felt a surge of adrenaline. Memories of the street, of the taunts and bullying, resurfaced. But this time, she wasn't alone. Alexander stood beside her, protective and reassuring. "She comes from a place where you have to be brave to survive," he said calmly, looking the boy in the eyes. The boy withdrew, impressed and a little intimidated. Lila, surprised and relieved, realized that she could now face the world without fear, as long as she had Alexander by her side. But the real challenge soon arrived. As they strolled down a busy shopping street, a man tried to take advantage of Lila, attempting to snatch her brand new bag. Instinctively, the little girl recoiled, ready to fight back. Alexander intervened immediately, his imposing stature and disarming calm were enough to send the aggressor fleeing. "You see, Lila," he said afterwards, reassuring her. "Even in this new world, there will be dangers. But now you know you can count on me, and on yourself." This first incident strengthened their bond. Lila understood that a life of luxury didn't mean the absence of problems, but rather the ability to face them with the right resources and support. And Alexander realized that saving Lila wasn't just about getting her off the streets, He had to teach her how to defend herself, to understand, and to navigate this complex world. That day, Lila returned to Alexander's house with a mixture of wonder and determination. She knew that, despite all the obstacles, she had found someone who believed in her. And for the first time in a long time, she believed in herself. A few weeks had passed since Lila's arrival in Alexander's luxurious world. She was beginning to settle into the house, the routines, and the privileges she had never known. But life in this new world wasn't all wonder. She now had to learn the social rules that money and status imposed. One afternoon, Alexander took her to a reception held at his residence for philanthropists and influential figures. Lila, dressed in an elegant but understated gown, entered the grand salon, her eyes wide open. The guests whispered and stared at her, intrigued by the presence of such a young and unusual child. "Who is she?" murmured a woman in sparkling jewels, a condescending tone in her voice. Alexander smiled patiently. "Her name is Lila. She saved my life. And she is here to learn and share with us." The murmurs turned into admiring glances, but a boy from high society, an arrogant teenager, dared to approach and exclaimed, "What is a street girl doing here?" Lila felt anger rising, but she remembered Alexander's lessons: courage and dignity are better than anger. She raised her head, looked at the boy, and replied calmly, "I am here because I can be more than you imagine." Silence fell. The boy, taken aback, stepped back, while several guests exchanged admiring glances. Alexander placed a hand on Lila's shoulder and whispered, "Very good. You learn quickly." But the social challenges didn't end there. Some adults, jealous of Alexander's relationship with Lila, tried to subtly ridicule her, commenting on her modest clothing, her mannerisms, or her past. Lila sometimes felt overwhelmed, but she began to understand that true strength lies not in money or status, but in self-confidence and in those who believe in you. Alexander, observing his apprenticeship, realized that saving a life also meant protecting the child's soul, giving him the strength to face a world that is often unjust, even when he was surrounded by wealth and security. That evening, Lila returned to her room with a new feeling. She had discovered that true wealth was not measured solely in money, but in courage, dignity, and respect. And in Alexander's eyes, she saw something she had never seen before: an unwavering faith in herself. Over time, Lila began to feel more comfortable in Alexander's world. She no longer simply followed along, she actively explored, asked questions, and sought to learn. Alexander encouraged her to discover her talents, develop her abilities, and nurture her natural curiosity. One morning, he took her to his technology and science workshop, a room filled with computers, gadgets, and futuristic prototypes. Lila observed each object with fascination, timidly touching some screens and buttons. "Do you want to try?" asked Alexander. Lila nodded. Her small hands trembled a little, but when she began to handle the tools and understand their functions, a spark ignited in her eyes. Alexander watched her, impressed by her quick learning and creativity. "You have a real talent for solving problems, Lila. You quickly grasp concepts and find original solutions." Lila smiled, proud but also astonished. She had never been encouraged to learn or develop her skills. On the streets, survival was the only lesson she had ever learned. Now, she was discovering that she could create, imagine, and succeed in a completely new world. Later, Alexander took her to the library in his residence, an impressive place filled with thousands of books. He explained to her, "Knowledge is a treasure that no one can take away from you. Read, learn, and you will see that the world can be even bigger than you imagine." Lila spent hours leafing through books on science, technology, and history. Each discovery fueled her curiosity and boosted her self-confidence. She even began to imagine inventions, solutions to problems she had seen in the street, such as improving safety and comfort for children like herself. For Alexander, seeing Lila blossom was a source of immense pride. He understood that the true transformation came not only from material comfort, but from the development of the girl's mind and heart. Lila was no longer just a rescued child, she was becoming a young prodigy in the making, ready to shine in this new world. But as Lila explored her potential, the city's past and dangers were never far away. Alexander knew that the real trials were far from over. And for Lila, the question now was, could she reconcile her survivalist roots with this world of luxury and endless possibilities? A few months after arriving in Alexander's world, Lila was beginning to master the basics of her new life. She read, learned, explored, and even invented small solutions to the problems she saw around her. But the real test came one sunny afternoon when Alexander invited her to attend a prestigious charity event, bringing together influential figures and philanthropists from across the city. Lila was both excited and nervous. The place was vast, decorated with gold drapes and exotic flowers, and the guests seemed to have stepped straight out of another world. She immediately felt the gazes of others, some intrigued, others skeptical, and a few clearly disdainful. As she approached a group of children from wealthy families, a boy with a mocking smile stepped forward. "Are you really the one Alexander saved?" he asked, in a condescending tone. Lila felt her heart beat faster, but this time she didn't want to run away. She remembered Alexander's words, "Courage and dignity are better than anger." "Yes," she replied calmly. "And I'm here to learn and share, not to be judged." The boy sneered and tried to provoke her, but another child, impressed by his self-assurance, intervened, saying, "Leave her alone. She's braver than you." Lila smiled discreetly, feeling her confidence grow. But the biggest challenge came when an influential adult made a disparaging comment about her past. The words were subtle, but the meaning was clear: a street child didn't belong here. Lila felt almost overwhelmed by fear and injustice, but Alexander placed his hand on her shoulder and said softly, "You know what to do, Lila. Show them who you are." Taking a deep breath, Lila replied confidently, "My past doesn't define who I am. My actions, my courage, and my determination do. And I will keep moving forward, no matter what you think." Silence fell. The guests, surprised by her composure, exchanged admiring glances. Alexander smiled, proud of the girl's strength of character. That day, Lila understood that true courage wasn't just about surviving on the streets, but about facing complex and intimidating social situations with confidence and dignity. She also realized that, even in a world of luxury and privilege, resilience and inner strength remained her best weapons. Upon returning home, Lila felt stronger than ever. She now knew that she could not only survive on the streets, but also shine and assert herself in this new world, with Alexander by her side to guide and protect her. Months passed, and Lila had now found her rhythm in Alexander's world. But she hadn't simply become the billionaire's protected child, she was beginning to positively influence those around her. Her curiosity, intelligence, and natural bravery impressed everyone she met. One morning, Alexander took her to one of his charitable businesses, where he funded projects to help disadvantaged children in the city. Lila watched the children playing in a recently renovated center. She recognized in their eyes the same distress she had felt on the street. "Alexander," she murmured, her voice filled with emotion, "I want to help them. I want them to know that they can make it, just like me." Alexander smiled, proud of his determination. "Then let's do it, Lila. With your energy and ideas, we can change even more lives." Lila began to actively participate in planning activities and creating educational programs. She suggested ideas to make learning more fun and accessible. Her creativity and empathy deeply touched the children and even some initially skeptical adults. But this positive influence was not without its challenges. Some in high society frowned upon this child who seemed to be challenging the established norms and hierarchies. She had to learn to navigate a world where power and status often dictated the rules, all while remaining true to her values. One day, during a meeting with several influential sponsors, a man tried to belittle her, implying that a street child couldn't understand the needs of others. Lila, taking a deep breath, replied calmly and with conviction, "My experience allows me to understand those you don't know. And I believe that together, we can truly make a difference." The man stood speechless, surprised by the girl's maturity and lucidity. Alexander, prouder than ever, placed his hand on her shoulder and whispered, "You're incredible, Lila." This moment marked a turning point for her. She understood that she must not only learn or survive in this world, but transform it through her vision, courage, and determination. She was no longer simply a rescued child, she was becoming a source of inspiration, capable of changing the lives of others and showing that courage and talent have no age or social status. Returning to Alexander's house that evening, Lila felt stronger, more confident, and more determined than ever. Her journey was not just a personal adventure, it was becoming a living example of resilience and hope, a message that even in the most difficult circumstances, courage and determination could transform everything. A few months after arriving in Alexander's world, Lila had become much more than a protected child. She was a living force, a source of inspiration, and a symbol of courage and resilience. But fate still had one last test in store for her. One evening, while Alexander and Lila were walking downtown to oversee a charity project, a sudden alarm sounded. A building intended to house underprivileged children was on fire. Screams and flames erupted, and panic spread among the residents and firefighters. Without hesitation, Lila rushed toward the entrance, determined to help those trapped inside. Alexander, though worried, followed closely behind. Lila guided the firefighters to the areas where the children were trapped, using her instincts and knowledge of the terrain, the fruit of her life spent on the streets. She rescued several children, directed the adults, and calmed those who were frightened. The flames were terrifying, but Lila did not falter. Alexander supported her, admiring her bravery. In the chaos, she demonstrated everything she had learned: courage, leadership, intelligence, and compassion. When the last child was safely outside, Lila fell to her knees, exhausted but relieved. Alexander rushed to her and took her in his arms. "You did something incredible, Lila. You saved lives today, just like you saved mine before." The firefighters, the residents, and even the spectators were speechless at the sight of this little girl who had faced the fire and the danger with incredible strength. Lila, breathless, understood then that her life was no longer solely in her own hands, she had the power to change the lives of others. Back at Alexander's, sitting in her room, which she had transformed into a true refuge and center of ideas, Lila gazed out the window at the city lights. She remembered the rain, the cardboard boxes, and the fear of the street. Then she smiled, aware that a single encounter, a single act of courage, could change an entire life. Alexander, standing beside him, murmured, "You saved me once, and now, you've saved so much more than me. You've saved lives, hopes, and you've changed the world around you." Lila placed her hand on his and replied, "And you have shown me that even the smallest can accomplish great things." That day, their bond was sealed forever. The homeless girl had become a symbol of hope and courage, and the billionaire had discovered that true wealth was not measured only in money, but in hearts touched and lives transformed. And as the city continued to shine under the stars, Lila knew that her life had just begun, a life where courage, compassion, and determination would guide her every step.